Hey there, I'm super excited. I have a new success interview for you. In today's podcast episode, it was my privilege to interview Wylie McGraw.
You already know. My passion and my mission to help you unleash your greatness within. My heart goes out to the underdogs that's on their way. If you think you can go from good to great, okay, let's motivate. GreatnessWithin.com. TJ Hoisington. GreatnessWithin.com.
You see, Wylie is a performance accelerator, which means he gets in the trenches, he works with clients one-on-one over a period of time to help them uncover the limitations that are holding them back and help them unleash their greatness within, if you will. He also works with prominent people. He helps improve the lives of leaders, public figures, and also professional athletes. His story is actually pretty amazing. He gets into that in the beginning of this interview. Now, if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, then hey, I invite you to subscribe and make sure you click that notification bell so that you're the first to be notified when I come out with a new podcast or a motivational episode or success interview like this one. And if you're watching this on Rumble, thank you for following me over there. And if you downloaded the audio version podcast episode from iTunes or Spotify or iHeartRadio, hey, thank you for being a part of my community. Now, without any further ado, let's jump into this interview with Wylie McGraw. Wylie, welcome to the Greatness Within podcast.
TJ, brother, thank you for having me today.
Oh, it's awesome to have you. I looked at your website. I interacted with some of your team, and it just seemed like some of our thoughts, philosophies, principles seem to align. So I'm anxious to jump into your world a little bit and share what you have to share with the community out there that want to get ahead and want to unleash their greatness within. So, hey, welcome to the show. And why don't we do this? One of the things I typically do with all the guests is I ask them to introduce themselves, give a little bit of their backstory and so forth. So if you could kind of take us through your journey, if you would.
My journey. Oh, what a great way to start.
Let's do it.
It's discovering the greatness within, even at a young age. And really, What do I do with that? You know, I don't even know what to label it at that age. But what's beautiful is that the journeys that we all go through are conducive to who we become later in life, and giving value and credence to that. I think most people don't give enough to their life experiences from a positive standpoint. So like you said, you know, my name is Wylie McGraw. You already introduced me in that aspect. I'm the founder of Radical Performance Acceleration. My work is slaying the demons for very powerful and prominent people. It's essentially been a behind the scenes resource for the better part of almost 14 years now, working with leaders, public figures, celebrities, professional athletes across many different walks of life. But it started back, you know, I came into this world as an athlete. So I never really got the choice to choose what path I went down. I was born into this world of sports. My father being a semi-pro ball player, and I've talked about this story many times before, where he threw away his own professional baseball career in the 70s. One, there was no money back in those days. Number two, I think he had other plans for his life. But then when he gave birth to his firstborn son and recognized the talent that I had at a young age, obviously that vicarious nature of a man wanted to build something up from there. So I was put into this environment to be this star athlete. And every day, in and out, year in and year out, I was expected to perform the tasks of being a baseball player. Yep. Now, I played sports like soccer and football off season, but baseball was the primary focus. So as I grew up in that world and then had two other brothers as well who were athletes, it was this incessant drive, this push to be the best I could be, to be this star pitcher, because that was my position of not only choice, but where my dad expected me to go because of my arm and my talent. And I found that it really started at a young age to develop this mindset, this desire to focus, wanting to be my best, wanting to show up and prove that I was good enough to be where I was at. But eventually it got to the point, as I got better and better year in and year out, and I was always the starting pitcher on every team I played on. As I got older and started to develop my own personality, I felt something shift inside me. I started to notice and recognize stress in a way that I didn't really experience it at a younger age. And I started to question the push to be perfect. I started to question, is this really something I want to be doing for me, or am I doing it for the expectation of my father and the pro athletes that he surrounded me around, given the fact he was friends and close connections with people like Rod Carew and Bo Jackson and Mickey Mantle and all those guys.
Yeah.
So it wasn't weird to grow up around them and be trained or coached or mentored by some of these guys. But I recognized that my family in itself had its own unique set of circumstances and stresses that played a huge part in why my dad focused so incessantly on making me this star for what he thought was going to be my path or my career. And when I got into high school, it was that world that I recognized that was not jiving with each other. I started to fracture mentally and said, you know what, something is broken here. Something's wrong. And I don't feel like I'm playing the game for myself or for the love of it anymore. I feel like I'm now playing it for the expectation of people outside of me. So that was my journey from birth into baseball. And then eventually it got to the point where I decided I needed to break away and find something of my own. And it's interesting how when you decide and you completely ground yourself, TJ, in the decision to make those choices, like to really seek out something for yourself, what shows up for you might be the most wildest of your, imaginations, or might not. But to me, it was bull riding. And that's where I jumped in the world of rodeo and became this competitive bull rider. Yeah. Go ahead.
Did it break your dad's heart when you left baseball?
Pissed him off. I don't even know if it broke his heart. Maybe at some degree it did.
Well, no, I get it. It was not a good, happy decision.
Yeah. And you know what's your thing is all about unleashing. I talk about unleashing as well. And I look back and realized in that moment I was making a difficult decision, but I was actually confronting something I was afraid of confronting all along, which was my father. The expectation of what I was supposed to be.
Okay, so okay, so that's interesting. Let's talk about that for a second.
Sure.
So you hear about tiger moms and tiger dads, high expectations on children. I'll be honest, I have 4 kids. I have my wife and I have high expectations on our children. Clearly, I mean, they've all done what I don't know genetically what's happened because I was never a great athlete like you. I was never that guy. But my kids hold state records still 7 years later after graduating from high school. And so something unique in our genetics is our kids are pretty good at it. But here's the one thing I've always said. Give your best. You're in competition with your best self, but you should compare a little bit to others, right? Because that helps gauge where your quality level is. But in the end, it's about you being the best you can be and helping them discover that.
Right.
My hope is that, and I don't think I have, created the scenario that kind of happened in your upbringing where I never told my kids that they couldn't do something different. Right. What I basically said is follow your heart, but when you do it, give it your very best. And that's a model of my upbringing when I was 15 years old and stumbled on a tape of Jim Rohn and discovered I want to be a motivational speaker and one day an author when I didn't read my first book till a junior in high school. When I was 15 years old, I had all these crazy, but I designed my life around it because of something you said a few minutes ago. I call it a true decision. And you left baseball, made a true decision to seek something else in your life that was more fulfilling. Did I articulate that okay?
Yes, you did, 100%. And if I may add to even what you said, which is fantastic, here's the contrast. One of the things I've discovered over my life experiences, and I have done over the last 14 years professionally with these leaders, is I've learned how to discern and delineate these very fine-lined, contrasting elements of what it means to be the type of father or person that creates standards and values for people in those frameworks or environments versus someone's personality that might have expectations that satisfy them and not what's best for the person that they're supporting. So I say that in the context that my father versus where you just said how you support your children is, I didn't really hear follow your heart, do what you feel is going to be best for you. I heard this is where you belong. That was a huge difference between what your kids are excelling because you provided them the framework and the environment to explore more fluidly who they are. And they are experiencing different elements of their life and picking and choosing what keeps them on that path of optimization. Whereas I was you're here as an athlete, you are a talented guy. You're going to do what I expect you to do. If you don't, all hell's going to break loose. That was my world. So to me, that forced me to make that hard decision. Those very uncomfortable environments with my family and my father, of course, the stress of my family dynamics and all the crap that I had to deal with growing up played a huge part in that too. So that's the difference I want even your audience to hear, is looking at these contrasts in your life and going, what has actually driven me to make a clear decision that makes sense for me versus am I living for somebody else's expectation?
I cannot tell you, and I know you've probably experienced the same thing, having given speeches and coaching and so forth. How many people after a presentation will come to me and say privately, like they'll come up and maybe sign a book or something like that. And they'll come up and they'll say, hey, I'm 55 years old. I'm 65 years old. I'm 72 years old. And I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. And I think many times they don't know what they value, truly value. That maybe they don't even know what truly would give them satisfaction. So they're constantly juggling balls of multiple focuses when they need to just make a true decision and go for it and become the best you can become at it, or fear.
Well,
what will people say?
Yeah.
I
love that you brought up fear. I was hoping we can even talk about that today too, because it's a huge component.
Let's do it.
For real change. But to add to your point there, I talked to a colleague of mine who's a former fighter pilot. And one of the biggest things he says, when I didn't know what I wanted to do in life, I decided to look at what I don't like about myself first. And then I wanted to fix those pieces. And then from there was birthed his like purpose or his passion. He started to uncover or unleash that element of himself versus trying to chase the idea of what will be satisfying and fulfilling for me. And then now you're 70 years old, still irritated at life rather than being satisfied, fulfilled, and happy, is because you've maybe not looked in a different direction to see, well, where can I actually stimulate what might be good?
It seems like that's what you did. That was kind of your strategy, because when for example, anyone can go to your website, wyliemcgraw.com, right? Anyone can go there. And if you go to the about section, you go from baseball or athletics, right? To bull riding, to skydiving, to the amazing, I would love to go there as part of your history, the amazing time that you had in the military. I assume, I don't say that in necessarily a positive way, because I'm sure you've seen things and done things, just crazy world out there that we live in. Yeah. But I'm an Army brat. So what branch were you in when you served?
I was with the Army, 101st Airborne Division. Yep.
This is cool. So did you ever live in Fort Campbell, Kentucky then?
That's where I was stationed, 101st. Yep.
101st. Yep. So I lived there for 4 years. In fact, I went all the way through 8th grade at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Would go to church in Hopkinsville.
Hopkinsville, 41A, all the way around.
41A, exactly. In fact, I remember, I've never told this story before. One of the things that we do is we drive. I was a little 8th grader, right? But I would ride my bike off the base. And I don't know if it's still there at one of the bases there. There's a Dairy Queen. I don't know if it's still there.
Oh, that's still there.
Yep. Oh, is it? Okay.
You're talking about. Yep.
Okay. Dairy Queen. I remember I had this bike, and there was this little wire that kind of controlled parking and so forth. And I thought, hey, I think with my bike, my BMX bike, I can bunny hop over this wire. It was only like 8 inches off the ground. I hit my front tire. I flipped off. I landed on my arm. Still have scars here today on my elbow. And I remember one of these GIs saw it happen. He came over and helped me. And I remember the best ice cream cone I ever had. He took us into that Dairy Queen. My brother and I, Steve, took us in that Dairy Queen and said, hey, let me get you an ice cream cone. I think you'll be all right with the scratch, but let me get you. And I just thought, isn't that cool? My experience of growing up in the military was really a positive experience.
I love it. And that's a good point to unpack for a second, because you had an experience, and people that are listening can actually consider this for a moment. You had a very uncomfortable experience. You hurt yourself. You tried to do something really challenging to you at that time when you're 13 years old in 8th grade, and you thought, I can make it. You had the confidence to do it regardless of outcome. You didn't care about, well, if I don't do it, how am I going to feel or look? Or if I do it, am I going to get hurt? You didn't care. You said, let's do it. And you did it. Now the outcome was not, quote, considered favorable yet. However, you hit yourself, got bruised up, banged up, scraped up, and you got a reward, so to speak, from going through that what we call a negative experience, even though it actually is a positive experience, because it builds character. Right. Because you got rewarded for doing the hard thing, making the decision that was very difficult or maybe unknown. That's the element of what transformation is all about too. as doing the things that scare you the most or are full of unknowns have the biggest rewards on the other side. So I just wanted to add that right now, because
that is so true. I love the idea that you're out there saying, because about talking about doing hard things, facing your fears, and the fear will dissipate, right? As Mark Twain once said. So I think many people are weak today, weaker than they could be, right? Because they have the potential. It's not about if, it's about unleashing, right? It's about discovering, but they're unwilling to do hard things because maybe they doubt, they talk themselves out of what will people think, so forth. What you and I are saying, I think we're on the same page here, is no, you have to be willing to step into the darkness or step into the unknown. And then through that, you'll discover that you're more capable than you think you are.
Absolutely. And you just said that was the best ice cream cone I've ever had in that moment, because of what you went through. The experience of the reward and success was so overwhelming. I would call it exponential. It was the feel, and it stimulated stuff inside you. I'm sure you've carried your entire life to create the life you have now, success. That's part of the element of unleashing potential.
Agreed.
Now, you brought up fear. That's a big component to human nature. We believe that when fear presents itself, something's threatening us. Something is going to hurt us. So we run away from it naturally. We've not evolved, as a species, as far from the idea of being chased by wild animals, etc. But fear itself is an inherent part of being human. It's inherent. You actually cannot get rid of fear. You said Mark Twain talked about dissipated. Yes, but dissipation doesn't mean elimination. It just means you allowed it to wash over you and it's still present with you. I call that learning to yield to the fear. When I've discovered through being a baseball player, breaking away from what I was expected, going into competitive bull riding, which is a world full of unknowns, that unleashed that wild side of Wylie that I wanted to meet, that my dad and my environment was not allowing me to experience. I got to know what it meant to face the wild unknowns of life and the outcomes of who I can become when I'm willing to step into the fear and use fear as an asset for my growth, rather than seeing it as something to overcome or try to get rid of. Because then that requires more energy and effort to focus on fear itself, and then you dilute your ability to stay focused on what you want. Big part of it. So when you can learn to yield to the fear of the unknown, I co-authored a book last year about peak performance in business, and my chapter was all about yielding to the fear of the unknown. It's unbelievable what you can unleash from within you when you allow yourself to recognize that TJ is going to be your coach and he's pushing you through something in his framework and it scares the crap out of you. That's when you take a step back and go, yes, this is a moment that's going to challenge and mold me into the person I want to be at that next level. And it's going to build character, unleash power, tap into potential I otherwise would never be able to grab onto simply by reading a book or going to a seminar. I need an environment that stimulates that fear response so I know that shit's about to get real. Excuse my French.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah. So I agree with you. It's one thing to learn from a book, which is a good thing, right? It's a good starting place.
Philosophical.
Fill your mind from a philosophical place, but you have to put yourself in situations that you can create. You kind of touched on it a few minutes ago, those neural pathways that when it's highly emotional, when you can create an experience or a learning opportunity that's highly emotional, rather than two brain cells, synaptic connections connecting, you have a highway that's created in your brain. And I do think that, think about not just motivational, think about speaking in front of public. I guarantee you most of the people listening to this right now, that a large percentage of them get nervous when they have to present in front of their peers or groups or whatever.
Absolutely.
I feel like, because I've been doing this for 25 years, I have almost taken fear down to zero. Only because it's experience over and over and over. Only a few times, like for example, if I interview someone where it's way out of my comfort zone that I haven't studied, that might create a little bit more nerves than normal, only because, hey, I need to go research that. And that's not my core element right there. But if I'm in my core element, and then I think that comes through practice, but I got to tell you, I just did an interview with David Moscow, who was the 12-year-old boy in the movie Big, who's now 47 years old. That's going to be coming out next week. And I tell you, we are talking about fear and so forth. And the reality is, once you put yourself in that place, you start to get comfortable with it over time. Tell me if you agree with this.
Yes.
If you have the why, the reason.
Yes.
What would equal pain to one person that has no vision can equal pleasure, or at least a feeling of growth and euphoria for another person if they have a reason to go through that pain.
Yes. Yes. I call that having a beacon. We call it purpose. To me, I have a beacon. I have a mission. I'm on a crusade to do the work that I do. I do it for that first and foremost. I don't do it to grow my business, scale, make a bunch of money. All of those things are byproducts of the type of person I live my life as, and what I expect the type of leaders I work with to do is at the same time. So it is about having a vision, and it's about having that beacon and letting that be your guiding principle, where everything else becomes the natural byproduct of your creation. But when we get derailed with our focus, that's when people trip up and have issues. And it does come back to that why. You said so many different pieces there. You've reduced fear down to a zero. You've actually learned to yield to fear. Fear is now your ally. Yeah. It's always going to be present. I skydive. I jump out of airplanes for the last 8 years for fun.
It? Yeah.
And I trust my gear. I get coaching. I go to camps. I fly in the iFly wind tunnels for hours on end to train my body and body flight mechanics, so I can learn how to stimulate movement in the right way to save my life if I need to. It's all about recognizing I do a very dangerous sport, but I do it safely. Yeah. Fear is always ever so present in the back of my mind or in my emotions when I'm getting ready to jump. I love it. I'm going to do it anyway because it's so much fun. It's so freeing, and it's very meditative for us up in the sky. But there's always that element there. I've just learned to let it be my partner, let it be with me. I've reduced it, so to speak, to that ally versus a threat because I was willing to embrace it, not see it as some conquering or obstacle I've got to overcome. Because if you do that, what you're doing is you're battling up against your fear and you're not actually getting anywhere with it. And that becomes your focus. Now you're fractured for what you really want to do in life. And then by the time years go by, you go, dude, I didn't get anywhere. Why am I so full of fear still? And why do I hate things? Last point to you, TJ, public speaking gets anybody nervous. It's like, if you look at, I'm going to add an element to nervousness for people to really grasp. Nervousness means often you care. You actually care about what you're going to go do. When you get ready to speak with someone you haven't really researched, it's not so much that you don't know what's going to happen or what this person is, or maybe not in your industry. There's a part of you that goes, I really care to bring the best value here with this person. So I'm going to that's why that comes up for people. But what we do is we like the feeling of comfort. So what we naturally gravitate towards from that evolutionary aspect of our mindset and our mental capacity and our emotions is something that we can tether to that kind of gives us a sense of comfort along with the ride that we think we're changing, which is why people get caught up in the rut of constantly going to seminars and programs and never really getting anywhere, but they believe in their mind they are changing, even though that might produce some results somewhere in a business aspect. But real change comes from letting go of a tether to comfort and stepping into the unknowns where real unleashing happens.
Agreed, 100%. Yeah. And you brought it up, the purpose that you have, the beacon, your words, the beacon that you have will make stepping out of that comfort zone
worth it.
Because you're willing to go through the pain. Because, you know, this is not new. This has been around for 100 years. There's two pains in life. There's the pain of discipline in the moment, and then there's the pain of regret that can last a lifetime. Yes. Some people trade what they want for the comfort, as you would say, the comfort that they want for the moment, not realizing the processionary effect long-term by avoiding the fears, the self-talk, the negative self-talk that they should be addressing and they should be overcoming and changing. Because I agree with what you said earlier, maybe people didn't catch it, but when you're focused on fear itself, you're depleting your energy.
Yes.
If you're focused on your purpose, realizing that a subtle sense of fear might be involved. I mean, I think of every biography I've ever read where someone's done some amazing thing, whether it be hike Mount Everest, whether it be someone like you that skydives, whether it be someone, I forget the gentleman's name, who hiked Yosemite all the way to the top without a rope.
Oh, wow.
I know. I forget his name.
It just slipped. It's, you know how you can taste it, but you don't know what the
totally.
flavor is.
But But you listen to some of the language of these people, and they all have a subtle sense of nervousness. And I think you're onto it here, that keeps you sharp. It keeps you fully aware and engaged in the moment. The problem is some people allow it to overtake their whole focus.
Big piece. And if we can add the element of my time in the service right now into this moment.
Yes, please do.
It's, I spent 6 years on active duty with the 101st Airborne Division as a combat infantry leader. I specialized in mortar gun systems, which we are on the front lines. We're one of the most lethal teams in the United States military for combat effectiveness. It's very dangerous is what we do. But what I've discovered in the 3 combat tours that I had overseas was that nervousness never really leaves you despite the training level. Not one person you ever meet in the military will ever tell you I was completely devoid of any kind of emotion or feeling or any nervousness when I did anything that I was told to do or a task to do in the military. I know Navy SEALs that tell me, yeah, man, when I got done doing that operation, I felt all my emotions, my nervousness come flooding right back. It was there. I knew from my experiences of becoming a SEAL or becoming an elite, Army veteran, combat veteran, soldier, whatever your job was, we are in frameworks and environments that challenge us and stretch us so that we can learn how to adapt to the situation.
And that's the unknown, because I'm imagining you're in the front line somewhere, and it's not that you're confident about your skill level. That's not the question. What you can't control is what can't be controlled by you 100%. And that's the variety of circumstances that could come up.
And it's allowing those experiences to present themselves, and then trusting the right response will be provided based on your skill, your training, your commitment to excellence, or your desire to be focused in those moments. Never gets rid of the humanity that we all are. If you hear someone says, I love going to war, they're a psychopath. At the end of the day, that's just someone who's just built completely different from a chemical standpoint. And again, there are people out there that are like that. But for the majority of people that are listening, that, like you and I, we have this humanity to us that drives us to do what we do out in the world for other human beings.
Correct.
Same aspect from the military that I took with me as a leader, that it's important to provide people the framework so they can embrace those very severe unknowns, the fear that comes with it, and get comfortable. It's called embracing the suck and recognizing that pain is a teacher. It's not a threat. It allows us to grow. It's like going to the gym. You go to the gym, lift a weight 3 times, kind of start to sweat and go, I'm done. If you do, you're never going to build muscle. You've got to experience, grow through the discomfort of that unknown of what your muscle is going to do when you do 12 reps of a bicep curl. Simple as it sounds.
It's simple, but it's true. It's a true principle. And you can mitigate and desensitize the fear a little bit by what you're feeding your mind with, the associations you have, like your success team, right? The people you associate with can help encourage you and so forth. You can do it. The training that you go through, the practice that you go through ahead of time can help mitigate how much that fear controls you. You say the experience, talking about military, the experience of eruption demystifies stress and gives you a new ability to thrive in any environment. Any additional thoughts on that?
Recognizing who I was after all those life experiences, from the pressures of family dynamics and stress, through breaking away from my father's expectation and dealing with the eruption that occurred, which is that reaction, or that you vomit all your stress on someone. That's an eruption. Into the bull riding world, being mentored and trained and pushed, being hurt, going into the military. I look back and recognize I was born into this world, just built differently. And that's what some people are, some people carry certain types of vibes, energies, intensity, etc. Some don't, and that's okay. I recognize I was already born into this world with this innate makeup that creates eruptions when I'm interacting with people, when I'm around people. They can't help but experience what they're holding on the surface, and they share it with me. They dump it. They want to talk about it everywhere I go. So it's not something I turn on or off when I do my work. It is who I am, and I live my life. I live my life in a state of discomfort because I deal with people's eruptions. When I use that term and I share that with the world, it's recognizing that when you have confidence to embrace the fear of the unknown, to have conversations or confrontations with people and their reactions to you, like in the military, those are eruptions. And the more you can embrace when that happens, the things are changing in the dynamic that you're experiencing in that moment, the less likely you're going to allow stress to overwhelm you in any environment you're in. Be it an elite soldier in the military during combat operations, being it a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, being a small business owner wanting to grow a little bit and get more clientele. Any environment you find where you are making a decision that causes a reaction to something that you said or that you did, stop and consider that's an eruption that's happening. And the more I can embrace the moments I have in these eruptions with people, the less likely the stress is going to overtake my focus, my emotions, my every aspect of who I am, the better I will perform under pressures and under stresses. I will recognize it's part of my growth. It's part of my transformation. Eruptions are going to happen all around us. The last piece of that, TJ, is unfortunately in our world, we have so much uncontained eruptions happening that it's infecting people negatively. Our politicians are a very huge prime example of that. There's no containment to those eruptions. People are just saying whatever the hell they want on TV now. They're the way they're talking, the permission they've been given to denigrate and disrespect and call names.
Slander.
Those are uncontained eruptions where you have a fight with your wife and there's no like a resolution to it. That's an uncontained eruption. You need to get into the environment where you're contained through those experiences, and you'll watch how you optimize your ability to thrive in any environment you're in. That's why you can look at a military and go, how are you able to go to war and be so calm when you're in a firefight? It's because we are used to the eruptions that occur and dealing with stress and getting very comfortable in that and embracing the suck that comes with that. Doesn't mean we lose emotions or humanity. We just learn how to use them and shift them in the moment of chaos so that we can succeed and accomplish our goals.
So a little suggestion for the listeners, my terminology would be, don't react, choose to respond. So when the next eruption, anyone listening or watching this here, the next eruption in your life, make a decision today that you're going to breathe, you're going to respond, you're going to trust that you have some resources that you can bring to this. Even if you don't, it's better to respond than react, right? And so there's a difference in the energy there. And one of the things I think when we're talking about thriving and so forth is learning how to respond, not just react, because we live in a very reactionary world. There's
no space that people give in those situations. What ends up happening is, again, mindset work, but emotional maturity is another piece. We are overworking our minds nowadays. We're stimulated far too much by entertainment, distraction. Our minds don't have the ability to create space when we are experiencing stimuli that otherwise is uncomfortable, radical, challenging. So our first reaction as humans is to push back at it. It's like a knee-jerk to get it off of us, because the energy we feel in that moment, we don't like it, but we've got to learn to create space through having experiences that allow us to build up that muscle, which is why I say to people that are listening, it can start as small as maybe there's that family member you need to confront and have that hard conversation with. And when you go do it, take a deep breath, like TJ said, and confront that person because of what you may not like or what you experience. Let them have their reaction and sit in it for a moment, because it will stretch your capacity to then be able to learn how to respond versus react, because it comes back to capacity. When we all recognize we're at different levels of capacity, then we can find the right environments and resources to stretch and challenge that capacity. And then we can grow and become more of what we want versus trying to figure out a way to circumvent that discomfort that we know we need to embrace. Because avoidance, TJ, requires more energy expenditure than confrontation. That's a huge insight I want people to walk away with. Avoiding something that's uncomfortable takes up more energy and more mind space than just confronting it and allowing yourself to expand from that point.
Unless you don't care about it and you just let it go.
Well, that's the other piece. I'm glad you said that. Is so there are some situations. It's like I hear someone I was talking to the other said, if I gave you 100 energy dollars, where are you going to spend your energy dollars throughout the day? Where are you going to be broke at the end of the day because the guy that cut you off, you're going to turn and give that guy $30, and then this person that said something stupid that One of my buddies is a firefighter, a paramedic firefighter. And he says, Wylie, he's a big stoic philosopher, he studies that. And he says, one of the biggest things for him is learning to become indifferent to what makes no difference. And I thought, that's phenomenal.
Yes.
Because does that person that cut you off really deserve you to roll your window down, turn and give them all of your energy and focus? What? You don't know what's going on in that person's life.
That's right.
And that has no reflection or bearing on who you are, but we give credence to that because we don't like the energy of it. You see, people don't know how to hold energy. That's why when you beep a horn at someone that cuts you off, they'll beep back at you. Why? They cut you off. Why did they do that? It's because they're giving it back to you. They don't like the accountability or the responsibility of holding what they just did. They want to push it off of them. And that's the key component to understanding how to respond versus react.
Eleanor Roosevelt once said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So when I'm in a conversation,
brilliant.
I'm in a conversation with someone I don't agree, or maybe even someone who's been on my podcast that I don't fully agree with the philosophies.
Sure.
But I think part of me growing and helping the audience grow is to hear sometimes different sides, right? But I've never had to get in an all-out brawl on my podcast or in an interview or even in private coaching. Sure. Because I give people the right, they can have their view. I may suggest that maybe long-term that view may not serve you, but you're entitled to the way you want to look at the world. The question is it the best choice, right? Is it the best of options? And sometimes it's not. And one thing I found through leadership coaching, I wonder if you'll touch on this, is although companies sometimes will bring me in to do leadership coaching, you know what I spend 80 to 90% of the time talking about when I'm on a private call and working with people has everything to do with their personal life.
Absolutely.
Right. And so talk on that, how I think true growth, you said it a little bit earlier, you touched on it, comes from understanding you more.
Right. Well, I had a feeling you were going here too. As soon as you started, I was like, oh, TJ is going to bring this up. It's going to be great. Because I'll start with this. The collective notion nowadays is that everything is just perspective and just people's opinions. And I hear it all everywhere I go. That's just your perspective or your opinion. Nobody talks about ugly truth.
I call that natural law. I'm a proponent of aligning with universal natural laws, not trends, not trends. Right.
There's a difference between truth, which is our truths, your truth, my truth. People have their own truth that serves their life, and that's great. And like you just said it, you said it in a different way, but it's the exact same thing. I may not agree with certain things. That's okay, because hey, if that works for someone, go for it. You know what? If that makes you feel better in your life, then I have no business even remotely, because maybe what I know or do or say is not important for you. It's not necessary for your growth. But then you get to the point where there's just what I call the ugly truth. And it's different from a perspective or an opinion. The fact is, in my work, working with these powerful people, my job and who I am and what I've recognized as someone who slays the demons of these people that they've carried around their entire life, they built their empires on, is I go after the ugly truths that everything in their life, everyone in their life has overlooked, doesn't understand how to get into. I get into the trenches with them where their lives are really happening with them. And I give them those ugly truths based on the behaviors and the outcomes and the things they've got going on in their life. And it stops them in their track to recognize I've carried around this truth and I've been unaware of it. And it's been screwing my ability to feel peace and freedom in my life with my successes. So going to your element of leadership, what you just talked about, is first recognizing that the only way we change the world, the only way we transform who we are, is by facing the ugly truth that's coming on the wave of love. Not love itself. Love doesn't change the world. Sorry, that's not just my philosophy or a perspective. If real love was the only element that changed the world, our world would not be crashing the way it is. We would have so much love that would just be uplifting everyone. It's ugly truth riding the wave of love. That means, like TJ, when you go work with these people, you go after 90% of their personal lives because you have love inside you. You have care for them. You want them to experience. You don't go, hey guys, I'm in here to give you a business strategy to scale your, performance financially and make your margins grow on your balance sheet and your P&L. You go, I care about the human being. So I'm going to give you truth on this love that I have for you to be your best while we're doing this work together. And leadership coaching, what you talk about, is recognizing that our personal and our professional performance are not mutually exclusive.
That's right.
That attitude and mindset has got to end right now, because you are you, whether you walk through the doors of a corporation, or you go into your studio to record a podcast, or you sit down with your private clients, or you grow your little product business. You cannot shut off who you are when you're doing your work.
So
it is there. So when you optimize a life, truly get into the trenches with them from the inside out, and you see where their difficulties actually reside, then the result becomes more exponential growth in the business and company and et cetera, with books and whatever they're doing. Those byproducts are just natural elements of who they've become. So I love that you go into your client's environment and you go, hey, we're going after you. Because
we're talking about self-images. We're talking about limiting beliefs and crushing those beliefs and replacing them with something better.
I go after dynamics. I go after relationships. I go into the hell that they're swimming in on a daily basis behind the curtain. There's the elements of their relationship to life, to their health, to their families, to themselves, to money, is all so dysfunctional because all they've done is they have stuffed down their entire lives, all the stress they've endured, the negative life experiences. They've never faced them head on. And then that festers inside them, and they've built something based on, I'll give you an example. Elon Musk is a big one, where he was bullied as a kid and he built his empire on the back of, I'm going to show the world that I'm not that geek, that punk that can be pushed around anymore. If Elon would face those elements that he's stuffed away in his life, that he's not really battled through head on, I would see us being probably on Mars by now. I just say that because he's such a brilliant mind. He's got so many things going on. It's not that he's an unsuccessful person, but I look at success is not from how much money you can make or how big your bank account is or what kind of fancy stuff you have. I look at success as how well you live your life. And then what do you build based on the foundations, like you just talked about with your clients, working on the personal first.
Love that. That's really good. I was thinking about when you were talking, if you were to talk to the team members that are led by the leader, the complaints that they typically have are usually personal or interpersonal issues with that leader, not so much strategic and processing issues.
100%.
Sure, those things do come up, right? If you're doing something 100%. Stupid and there's a better idea and the leader's not willing to listen, that's one thing. But I think that that's small compared to how employees feel like they're being treated. What kind of eruptions does the leader create in the team that cause people to feel uncertain about how things are going and so forth? We're making people feel less than they are.
Yeah. And so all that starts with the personal side, carried over to the business side.
Let's talk about now the concept of blame and victimization. That's a common thing in our world today. What's your thought on that?
That comes from, and again, that lack and gap and ability to hold energy when you're being held accountable for something. Now, victimization can come in many forms. There's a spectrum to it. When you grow up with a narcissistic father, they unfortunately train you and condition you into becoming a victim, because you have to learn how to do that to adapt and survive in that kind of environment. Or you have the other side of the spectrum, is when people blame or victimize themselves, like a CEO or a leader of a company or business, military. What they're saying is, I refuse to be responsible for how impactful that decision was. I want to dissipate the energy of responsibility onto other people, because, hey, we're all part of this. And it comes back to recognizing real leadership means taking responsibility, because you're the one who makes the ultimate decision. You're the one who drives the system, the train, the team for more success and more growth and more optimal experiences. So that blame aspect just comes from, I would say, I worked with a hedge fund many years ago, and I was brought in to work with their private wealth team. 10-person team. These guys were just great people all around, but they were suffering. They were suffering so bad under the weight of personal stress. Mm-hmm. Again, I uncovered that by being in their environment with them, constantly. But what we ended up uncovering in private conversations and the work of making them deal with the stress they were under was the fact that their team leader was trying to carry the weight of everybody's personal lives and professional lives as if it was his own. But he was also, unfortunately, making decisions from his own dysfunctional stress simultaneously, which was taking them down the route of being in the red constantly. The hedge fund president and CEO was like, look, we're on the verge of basically eliminating this department because these guys are just like dropping the ball completely. To get to the point of realizing that number one, there's the extreme version of taking responsibility, and then there's the blame everybody else is, responsible for this downfall. And getting to the place of balance and recognizing that leaders have an obligation to say, I want my team to function and be optimal. I want them to bring me solutions. I want to work in organized fashion with each other. And ultimately, I will then make the decision if it's required for me to do that. Versus it going, well, if things fall apart, you guys didn't pull your weight. So there's nothing I could have done. I've done my best. I tried to make you do your job right and you didn't do your job, all the way to I'm going to carry it all myself and I'm going to fall apart because I'm trying to figure out how to be the crossbearer for the entire organization. So I want to end that point with, I learned in the military that when I got tasked to be the squad leader for my 60 mortar section and I took my guys to Iraq, it fell on me. However, my responsibility was to give them the latitude so they could be leaders in their own positions as well. So that when we fail or we succeed, it is on my shoulders, 100%. And if I accept the responsibility, it's going to change things quickly for us in a very positive manner, rather than bog us down by now trying to have to go, okay, let's dive into this now, because at the end of the day, it is your responsibility. And now you've wasted time, energy, and resources on trying to get the damn leader to admit the truth and just hold a responsibility so that you can actually progress through the mistakes or the failures you've just gone through. My wife said it the other day, one of the sexiest things in the world is when I say something and you go, I'm sorry, honey, you're right. I kind of screwed that up. She goes, I just love that. Because that's you just owning it. You're not blaming anything else, like, oh, I was tired from all the work we did last night, or, our dog had to take a poop, or whatever it might have been. I just go, my bad, I messed up. I'll get to that right now. And it's just that responsibility empowers you and others around you, and it uplifts the entire team or the collective simultaneously.
And that's simply that's not simply only about, but it's about kindness, respect,
yes,
and so forth, and empathy, and treating people the way you would hope to be treated. Now, not everybody's reality is there, right?
Sure.
Depending on how their background and so forth. But there are ideal ways. We live in a culture right now that's trying to demonize meritocracy. And at the core of that seems to be a little bit of blame, meaning someone didn't come from a certain background, therefore that's why they weren't successful. But you and I could give example after example of every culture, every creed, every color, everything, where people have come from horrible circumstances or not favorable circumstances and turn their lives into something of a success. And I think we have to be careful to buy into only certain people get ahead. We come from a place that if you're willing to pay the price, if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to acquire the attitudes and the habits and so forth, you too can also be successful, but you can't buy into the idea that
it only happens for these groups.
It only happens for these groups of people.
Well, that's the other thing, is identifying what success actually means for you too, instead of buying into the collective notion that success means big bank accounts, notoriety, fame, etc.
Right.
And if I don't achieve that, then I'm a failure. And then it's now the blame comes out.
Right.
To, well, that the color of their skin is X, or they had the opportunity here, or they were born into that. Now there are some people that are, because again, on a spectrum. But you're right. It comes back to being careful not to fall into the trap that seeing those detrimental life experiences as a setback or a limitation to your abilities. And what people do is they fall victim to that, and it basically crushes them. They don't use that as a situational motivation to go, you know what? Clearly, God, the universe, whatever beliefs I have is bringing this to me to see what I'm really capable of, to see what my potential is all about, to tap into some power that maybe I possess. There's not enough self-love and self-worth relationship that lets people feel empowered to embrace those arduous environments they grew up in. Well, I have friends that grew up in the hood that are now multimillionaires, and things like that. It's like they grew up in the environments. They felt like, hey, this is a challenge for me because I know I'm capable of something. Now I'm in the music industry producing rap music for these very popular artists, and I'm making millions of dollars. So it's like, you're right, looking at these environments and going, what is it supposed to be teaching me and challenging me to do and become, rather than falling back and crying and becoming a victim to it. There's so much you can do with those situations. It's unbelievable. It's possible for you.
And people that are blaming typically don't have vision. They don't have the beacon, as you would say. They don't have the sense of purpose. Where are you going? And recognizing that life is not perfect, that you're going to make mistakes, you're going to fall down. I can only imagine the first couple of times you bull rided, right? Who knows what that was like? I have no idea. But you learn through experience. And so remember that every master was an apprentice at first. And to think that we can start at the top or lower the standards so more people can get ahead, I say raise the standards for everybody.
Well, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Raise the standards. The whole point of that having these high standards is to uplift people.
Correct.
And then I'll circle it back to then when our leaders are not living optimally, that does not create the same impact. The bar becomes lowered because they're unwilling to do the work to uplift others. It becomes this selfish, individualized world over here, and everybody's starting to feel left out. And now we have this entire popcorn experience of people blaming and victimizing and not knowing where to go. And vision gets wiped out altogether, and humanity starts to suffer. But it all does start with the standards and the bars that each individual does decide to live by, but then recognizing my decisions, my choices, my efforts all do have an impact on those around me as well, not just me. And when we can get back to that place and lift up our own standards, others around us, some are going to go, I don't like that, and they're going to fall off, but that's still going to stimulate them to change something in their lives. And then others will go, I want to do that too. And they're going to reach up and go, help me get up here, pull me up to where you're at. And it's unbelievable when you're right, lift it up, stop trying to come down and lower your vibration, hoping that you give somebody at least enough of a step up, instead of reaching your hand down and saying, hey, I got you, just reach up and I'll hold on to you until you climb up this wall. And then when you get up to my level, I'll throw you over the top of it. We don't have that anymore. People don't live by standards and values.
No, they don't even know what they are many times. Or people have their circle group online or in their social media, and they tend to follow the ideals that are within that group instead of separating themselves and say, no, this is who I want to be. This is the trajectory in which I want to move toward. This is what I want to achieve. And in the process, as you've just said, is take people along with you, rise those people. Probably eliminate some of the dream killers in your life, right? That's not going to help you. So if it's a family member, you're probably going to just limit the stories you tell them and the things you tell them. You're not going to eliminate them maybe unless they're abusive. You're not going to eliminate them from your life completely.
Boundaries.
But you're going to set some, you're going to set some boundaries, but otherwise there are people in your life that want to see you success. And you know what? They want a cheerleader as well, that you can help them move forward as well. The key is getting the right people around you.
Absolutely. And I think it's our responsibility when we create, this is why I feel like we're lost on the wrong path when it comes to our society in this capitalistic manner, is that our responsibilities as leaders, our responsibilities as people that do these unbelievable things for others, is to consistently raise the bar and hold out our hand and give them the environments that challenge them to be their best, supporting them from love, care, and understanding that they are where they are at, but letting up on them because you know what they're capable of isn't love. It's actually giving them the credence to fail and accept their failure as the final nail in the coffin. To me, real love means I'm willing to poke at things, kick someone's butt, push them in ways they don't want me to push them, say things they may not like the way I say it or words I'm saying to them. I love you enough that I'm willing to irritate you, piss you off, and push you because I know the real you behind all of that garbage you carry around, those distracting qualities. I know the real you, what you're capable of, and I see it, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get that out of you. That's the responsibility of leadership, is being able to do that for other people, not how do you stroke your own ego and how do you grow your own bottom line, make yourself this ultimate successful person, and then showing it on social media. It's like, look at me over here in Monaco with my yacht. That's not leadership.
No.
That's greed and ego and selfishness. And that has no place in the world of transformation.
You seem balanced. You seem balanced. I remember when I had Ken Blanchard, who wrote the book 1 Minute Manager many years ago, classic, legendary book. Ken Blanchard was awesome. He was one of the first guests I ever had on the show in 2014, I think it was. Anyway, he said ego stands for edging God out. And I think there's those core principles that have been around for 2,000 years or more have stood the test of time because people become better by them. And if the standard isn't raised high by leaders, by team managers, by spouses, and so forth, our job isn't just to muddle through life and wake up every morning, have a job, come home, watch some TV, go to sleep, wake up the next morning with a job, and then work out our days just working. I don't think that's the purpose of life. I believe the purpose of life, in part, and I get that everyone's definition is their own, right? So this is TJ's definition, is becoming the measure of your creation. Who were you brought in this world to become? And I think part of life's difficulty, stress, struggle, but hopefulness is to figure out who that person is, who you are, Wylie, who TJ is, who Catherine is, who Jessica is. Who are you? And then are you building your life around that? Because there's much more energy in that area, if you can find it, to put that forward than just showing up and getting a paycheck.
Right. And here, let me add to that real quick, TJ. Those of you who are listening to it, TJ made a huge point here, and I'm going to take it home. The only way you find out who you really are is by going into those environments you can't control, that scare you, that rattle you from within, that challenge you in ways you least expect. That is where you discover who you really are and what you're fully capable of accomplishing, which is why my life experiences up to this point helped me discover that I was born into this world to slay demons, to go after the elements of human beings that hinder their power and potential, that slow their life progress, that limit them becoming this high-level, elite, peace, freedom, successful version of themselves. And I only was able to do that because of those life experiences. If I would have gone down a different comfortable road, I never were really tapped into who Wylie really is. And you do the same thing. It's like 100%. That is our responsibility. It doesn't matter if I worked a job at one point but I still found joy in it because I recognized, like, where can I find good in this?
Exactly.
And giving yourself
That's
permission.
Huge. Yes.
Find good even in the confrontation. Find good in the, quote, emotions you may not like. Stop putting so much judgment on how it's supposed to look, how it's supposed to be, because there's never a right time for anything other than transformation. When it shows up, you may not say, I'm not ready for this. Yeah, you are, because it showed up for you. Change your perspective and go, you know what? It showed up because I'm ready for it versus I'm not ready because I don't like the way it feels right now. Huge difference.
And when you fail, I wrote down, don't be overly self-critical.
Right.
So when you fall down, the natural tendency is to damn yourself or overly criticize yourself over and over. The one mistake you end up playing in your mind 1,000 times.
And you build from that.
And then that affects your trajectory. People are hard on themselves naturally. Leaders need to recognize that. Individuals need to recognize that. Don't take yourself too seriously. Work hard, know that you're going to fail, but get back up and try again. That's the core of every great biography. They fell down and they got back up.
FAIL is an acronym for finding answers in life. Every time you fail, failure is the twin brother or twin sister of success. It's part of it. You cannot eliminate it. You're going to have those experiences. And when you allow that to be the moment where you find the answer in life for the next step, you pick yourself up and go, you know what? I like this. When you can get turned on by the burn, you grow so much more eloquently. That's the piece of it as well. When I fall down, when I was growing up and I was falling down in those experiences, I actually became turned on and I loved it because I felt like you jumping over that line. You like, wow, what am I feeling right now? This is unbelievable. You embrace it and go, man, this is going to make me stronger so that when I fall again, it's not going to be so impactful. it's going to be actually
learn from it.
Really good for me. I'm going to build something from it. That negative talk only comes from the external collective idea that this is bad and this is good. And we get so black and white in life when life is really dynamic and very gray. Black and white only matters when you're creating structures for certain things, not for human performance, not for growth and transformation. It's very fluid and it doesn't go from A to B.
Yeah. Okay, brother, listen, I feel like we could go on and on and on.
Me too.
How can people find out more about you?
Well, we have a new podcast, Wise Words and Whiskey with Wylie McGraw. They can tune in, subscribe, listen to great low-key conversations on high-performance living where I bring cool guests on like you, TJ, and we sip really cool whiskeys. I introduce them to the world of experiencing and appreciating spirits in a different way while diving into some like fireside chat style conversations on insights to have a more high-performance life from peace, satisfaction, etc. That's one place that we've got going on right now on Apple.
Is that
Podcasts.
Something they can find? The podcast is on iTunes. Where do they go to get that?
Well, it's going to be launched live on Apple Podcasts first. So, and we're also doing a whiskey giveaway for people that want to subscribe to the show, but they can also go to WylieMcGraw.com. They can jump into the giveaway there. They can peruse more about my philosophies, the work that I do with leaders, etc. Those are the two key points right now that we've got out for people.
That's great. Hey, listen, Wylie, it was great to have you on the show. I knew when I accepted the invitation to have you come on, right? I thought, let me see, who is this guy? Let me research him. Let me figure him out a little bit.
Of course.
And I was impressed with what I saw. I'm impressed by the things you said today. I think it can be useful for people, even if it's just a simple reminder.
Right.
Let's just end on the idea that don't blame your circumstances, be willing to do hard things, and then lead with love and empathy, and we'll all get to a better place. Any last words from you?
Yeah, I'll add, have a life that you live through standards, values, something you're unwilling to break or waver, no matter if it's family, friends, colleagues, etc. Because when you hold to those standards and you live from that place of love, but compassion, yet at the same time challenge, everything around you simultaneously will grow alongside you. That's what I would leave with people, is have those standards and do whatever it takes to uphold them, even if it means confronting someone that you love.
100%. Awesome. Wylie, thanks for being on the show.
TJ, it's been an absolute pleasure, brother. Thank you very much.
You bet. Bye-bye.
GreatnessWithin.com